The rain hammered against the penthouse windows like 1,000 accusing fingers, blurring the glittering skyline of Manhattan into a watery grave. Alexander Hale, the man who had built empires from whispers and turned steel into fortunes, slumped in the leather armchair that had once cradled his late wife's laughter. His fingers trembled around the cold barrel of the pistol, its weight a mocking echo of the empire he'd lost control of, not the billions, but the fragile kingdom of his heart. Elena's final breath still haunted him, her betrayal revealed in a crumpled letter found too late. "I never loved you, Alex." It was the money, always the money. The words clawed at his soul, ripping open wounds he'd buried under boardroom battles and champagne toasts. Tonight, the facade cracked. Tears carved silent rivers down his stubbled cheeks as he pressed the muzzle to his temple, whispering to the empty room. "What's left when the only light you chased was a lie?" In that suspended heartbeat, the door creaked open, not with thunder, but with the soft patter of hesitant footsteps. And in that moment, everything teetered on the edge of oblivion. Alexander's world had always been one of sharp edges and unyielding ambition. At 45, he was the titan of Hale Industries, a name synonymous with innovation and ruthlessness. But beneath the tailored suits and the penthouse perched like a crown above the city, lay the ruins of a man shattered by love's cruel sleight of hand. Elena's death 6 months prior had been ruled a tragic accident, a slip on the marble stairs during one of her girls' nights out. The official report spoke of a broken neck and a bottle of vintage Bordeaux spilled like blood on the foyer floor. But the letter, tucked into her jewelry box like a venomous secret, painted a different portrait. Years of feigned affection, siphoned funds funneled to a lover in the shadows, and a final, fatal push toward freedom. "You were my cage, Alex," it ended. He read it nightly, each word a fresh incision, yet denial wrapped around him like a suffocating fog. She couldn't have, he'd tell himself, staring at her photo on the mantel, her smile a ghost that mocked his gullibility. It was a forgery, a cruel prank by rivals jealous of our life. The boardroom became his battlefield, where he'd bark orders and seal deals with a ferocity that masked the hollow ache gnawing at his chest. Work was his anesthetic, numbing the truth that the woman he'd built his world around had been a mirage. That rainy evening, as thunder rattled the crystals in the chandelier, the pain finally breached the walls. He'd sent the staff home early, everyone but Maria, the quiet black maid who'd tended his home for a decade. Maria Washington, with her warm brown skin etched by lines of quiet endurance, had been a fixture as unassuming as the antique vases she dusted. At 52, she'd raised 3 children alone after her husband's abandonment, her days a rhythm of scrubbing floors and mending linens for the elite who saw her as invisible. But Maria saw him. The way his shoulders sagged when he thought no one watched, the untouched meals pushed aside like unwanted truths. She'd lost her own anchors, a son to the streets, a daughter to illness, leaving her with a granddaughter, little Lila, whose wide eyes reminded her that survival wasn't just enduring, but hoping. The door's creak shattered the silence. Maria froze in the threshold, her apron damp from the storm, a tray of chamomile tea trembling in her hands. Her dark eyes, sharp as polished obsidian, locked onto the gun. Time stretched, taut as a wire. "Mr. Hale," she whispered, her voice a thread of southern honey laced with steel, "that ain't the answer you seek in." Denial surged in him like bile. "Get out, Maria. This isn't your place." But she didn't budge, setting the tray down with deliberate calm, her gaze never leaving his. "She don't know," his mind screamed, "the emptiness, the betrayal that hollowed me out." Yet her presence pierced the isolation, an unwelcome light in his voluntary dark. She moved closer, not with pity, but with the steady grace of someone who danced with despair and refused its lead. "I seen that look before," she said softly, sinking into the ottoman across from him. "In the mirror, after my Jimmy left with nothing but a note saying he found someone better. Left me with babies and bills, thinking I wasn't enough." Her words hung, unadorned, pulling at the threads of his facade. He lowered the pistol an inch, the metal cold against his thigh. "You don't understand," he muttered, voice cracking. "She took everything. My trust, my..." Pain bloomed then, raw and unrelenting, a sob escaping like a confession. Maria reached out, her calloused hand covering his, not to take the gun, but to hold the man. "Oh, child," she murmured. "Pain like that don't discriminate between penthouses and projects. It just sits, heavy as a stone, till you name it." In the hours that followed, as rain softened to a drizzle, Maria stayed. She didn't preach or pry. She simply was. She brewed fresh tea, her movements a quiet liturgy, and shared fragments of her own fractures. "Denial's a liar, Mr. Hale. It whispers you strong enough to carry it alone. But truth is, sharing the load lightens it." He resisted at first, words tumbling in jagged bursts, Elena's laughter turning to lies, the empire feeling like ashes in his mouth. But as dawn crept in, painting the room in hesitant gold, the pain shifted. Not gone, but voiced, it lost some venom. Maria's eyes, lined with her own unspoken sorrows, met his without judgment. For the first time in months, Alexander felt seen, not as the billionaire, but as the broken soul beneath. That morning, as she gathered her things, Lila's small voice echoed from the hallway phone, Maria's daily check-in with her granddaughter. "Nana, tell me about the brave lady again," the child pleaded. Maria smiled faintly, glancing at Alexander. "There's brave in all of us, baby. Sometimes it just needs a nudge." As she left, Alexander holstered the pistol in his safe, the click a small surrender. Denial's grip loosened, just enough for pain to breathe, and in that breath, the first whisper of possibility stirred. Weeks blurred into a tentative rhythm after that storm-swept night. Alexander's penthouse, once a mausoleum of polished grief, began to hum with unfamiliar life. He retained Maria full-time, not out of obligation, but a quiet recognition that her presence anchored him against the tide of isolation. The board noticed the change, fewer explosive tempers, deals sealed with renewed clarity, but he waved off their probes. They see the titan, he thought, not the man piecing himself back. Reflection came unbidden, in stolen moments. Mornings over coffee where Maria's stories wove through the steam like lifelines. She'd speak of her youth in rural Georgia, picking cotton under a sun that blistered dreams, or the night her daughter, fever-ravaged, slipped away in an understaffed clinic. "Loss ain't fair, Mr. Hale," she'd say, wiping a vase with gentle strokes. "But it teaches you what matters ain't the talking, but the keepin', the love you gave, even if it weren't returned." Pain lingered, a faithful shadow, but reflection transformed it into a lens. Alexander found himself wandering Central Park on weekends, the city's pulse a counterpoint to his introspection. One crisp autumn afternoon, he encountered an old mentor, Dr. Elias Grant, a retired psychiatrist who'd once navigated his early career anxieties. They sat on a weathered bench, leaves swirling like confetti for forgotten victories. "Betrayal's a thief, Alex," Elias said, his voice gravelly with years. "Steals your map, leaves you lost. But reflection? That's the compass. Ask not why she hurt you, but what you learned in the loving." The words struck deep, echoing Maria's wisdom. "I gave everything," Alexander mused inwardly, "and in return, learned my worth wasn't in her gaze, but in my capacity to trust." Small victories bloomed. A journal by his bedside, pages filling with unfiltered truths, fears of vulnerability, the joy Elena's facade had briefly sparked. He wrote of the pistol's cold kiss, not with shame, but as a pivot point. Maria's world intersected his in tender collisions. Lila, her 8-year-old granddaughter with braids like midnight rivers and eyes full of unscarred wonder, visited one Sunday. The child, orphan young and fierce with curiosity, tugged at Alexander's sleeve. "Nana says you got a big heart, like a lion hiding in a castle. Why you sat?" Her bluntness pierced him, a stranger's warmth cracking his reserve. He knelt, voice thick. "Sometimes, little one, grown-ups forget how to roar." Lila giggled, pressing a crumpled drawing into his hand. A lion with wings, soaring over storm clouds. "Nana says broken wings mend if you let the wind carry you." In that exchange, realization flickered. Healing wasn't solitary. It thrived in the innocent mirrors of others. Maria watched from the kitchen, her own reflection stirring. Years of quiet service masking her ache for recognition, for a life beyond aprons and anonymity. Alexander saw it then, the parallel fractures, his wealth a gilded cage, her labor an invisible chain. Their bond deepened through shared silences and sparked dialogues. Evenings found them on the terrace, city lights winking like distant hopes. "I saved you that night," Maria admitted one twilight. "But truth? You save on me too. Making me remember my voice matters." He nodded, the admission a bridge. "You pull me from the edge, Maria. Showed me pain's not the end, but the forge." Personal growth unfurled slowly, petal by petal. Alexander mentored a young intern at Hale Industries, channeling his scars into guidance. Maria enrolled in night classes for a housekeeping certification, her first step toward owning a small cleaning service. Struggles persisted, a nightmare of Elena's face twisting into accusation, or Maria's doubt whispering she'd overstepped. But in Lila's laughter, Elias's counsel, and their mutual confessions, victories mounted. He donated anonymously to underfunded clinics, honoring lost daughters. She taught him to bake her mama's cornbread, the kitchen filling with sense of home. As winter yielded to spring, Alexander stood at the window, the skyline sharp and alive. The pistol, long forgotten, symbolized not defeat, but rebirth. Maria joined him, Lila's drawing frame nearby. "We both brave, ain't we?" she said. He smiled, truly, for the first time. Braver together. In the quiet renewal of shared souls, Alexander discovered that true empires were built not of steel, but of mended hearts, fragile, fierce, and forever transformed. Self-acceptance bloomed like dawn after endless night. "I am enough," scars and all, emotional peace settled, a gentle tide washing away the debris of what was, revealing the strength of what could be. And in that grace, two broken souls found wholeness, not in perfection, but in the raw beauty of rising again. Moral of the story: healing is not a solitary battle but a shared journey, where the courage to save another ignites the inner strength to mend oneself, proving that in vulnerability lies the greatest power, and in connection, the timeless truth of renewal.